Directors meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. You kindly join me and stand as we honor our country and our state flags. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right, thank you very much. Receive public comments. Is there anyone to sign up for public comments? Good. Consider an act request for adjustments. Mike, do we have any adjustments?
Nothing from me this month.
Thank you. All right, consent agenda. Do I have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda?
So move.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Regular agenda. Review and act on the district draft fiscal year 2023-24 operating budget and recommend water and sewer rate structure. I think everybody had their insert last month and reviewed it, and so we're here to vote on it this morning.
We are, and before you is the final budget memo draft and then the final budget. There was no changes from last month of any consequence. So if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
No, but so we can go to the questions. I recommend approval.
Do I have a second?
Recommend what?
Recommends approval on item number 8 on the operating budget. I'll second that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
That
Motion carries.
to, which was part of that agenda item. Just want to clarify and make sure that was included the rates as well, water and sewer rates.
No,
No.
yeah, it does, yeah.
No, not this. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
About the tax.
But
Okay.
we'll come back with separate agendas in the next month or so to amend RNS. 13. Yeah.
But I do want to say how impressed I am that we set a tax rate to 1/10,000th of 1 penny.
You gotta be right on it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's the next item.
Okay, item number 9, we'll conduct a public hearing regarding the district's intent to levy the 2024 tax rate.
Yeah, I am recommending a 5-cent tax rate, gives us $140,000 excess at the end of the year. And retains our $3.5 million of excess reserve unrestricted, which was as of our last audit. And we'll have another audit this month.
Before you jump to that, I'm assuming there's no one for the public here
So,
to
yeah,
discuss it.
formally we need to go ahead and adjourn the regular
Regular
meeting,
meeting.
open the public.
Yes. That's what I did, but okay. All right. Open up on the public hearing. Is there anyone to address the board on the proposed tax rate?
I have a comment. My feeling is if we go with the lower tax rate, it's going to make it more difficult to possibly consolidate with MUD 6 because of the tax rate differential. So,
Well,
and it's,
we don't have a concurrence by their board to consolidate,
at this,
but I think we can talk about that. And they ought to be down to the same amount because they paid off all their bonds. And why we are carrying these big reserves, the reason we carried these big reserves was because we were going to buy out of our bond as we had done out of the last 2 bonds of San Jacinto River Authority. And we have been told that San Jacinto River Authority does not intend to have us participate in their bond, but they are going to put the cost of their bonds in the water and sewer wholesale rates.
You know, Bob, I applaud your efforts on MUD 6 consolidation, but we've been down that road with them a couple of times, and I'd rather have them approach us in the future if it's going to happen. And we spend a lot of time and efforts trying to do that, and you don't have full concurrence by that board.
But a new board will be coming up in another year, and
Well,
they
if
did tell
that
me,
happens, and I think, we can address it then, but I just.
And by,
wasting our
there's
time.
no problem in us increasing our tax rate.
I
to
think that,
Equal theirs, we can do that any day. We can't decrease it. Or I would like not to decrease it.
well, I would disagree with you on it. We can easily increase it.
Well, of
many-
course we can
How many
increase it.
people in MUD one are going to vote for a tax increase in order to consolidate?
Keep in mind too, you are a developed district, and so you're gonna be limited to the 3.5
Okay.
without this.
Something else I would bring up just for consideration.
If we consolidate, we can use our excess reserve to equal the tax rate.
A question. So you're meaning if we go to 5, we're limited to go up 3.5%?
Correct. And so that's the risk as you get into these really low tax rates that you restrict your ability to be able to increase revenue from a maintenance and operations side in the future because of Senate Bill 2 and your status as a developed district. You're limited to 3.5% of the revenue, which can be a pretty low number. It's also a function of the average homestead resident. So it's not just a 3.5% rate increase. It's a function of how much revenue it generates, a particular tax rate generates on an average resident homestead
Compared to last year.
compared to last year. So you do have limitations there, and your ability to raise decreases quite a bit. That doesn't apply to debt service, but y'all have a very low, you don't hardly have any remaining bond authors.
We got about $100
Yeah,
or something.
so that doesn't really provide you with much relief.
Without going to the public, as we did when we refinanced, we had to go to the public.
Yes.
And they have to vote on increasing the bond level.
That's correct.
And by the way, that's a no-brainer.
But I also think there are lessons to be learned in MUD 36. They lowered their tax rate so low that they got in all kinds of trouble financially.
Part of what I wanted to share, and just to kind of throw out some different thoughts. We have some significant infrastructure improvements and renewal coming down the pipe. You've heard about all the SDRA things. You're going to be hearing about things in the districts as well for Woodlands Water. It's easy to look at a specific year and say, well, looks really good. Let's go ahead and drop the tax rate significantly. But you have a lot of infrastructure costs coming down the pipe. I would caution you to not lower it very much, if any, beyond the recommendation that your consultants have given you, even though it looks good right now.
The people who want to form a city really look closely, and they didn't make a big issue of it last time. But if we continue to hold these big reserves, unrestricted reserves, and we get an increase in our cost per meeting, which is significant as last month, that's a real issue for somebody to consolidate and collapse all of the MUDs into a township, in a community. And it's a real selling point. So we got to be very careful about building these big reserves and having big per diems when the people in the township board get nothing. People in Panther Creek and other village associations get nothing for their meetings. And this is going to be a big issue if somebody wants to pick it up. And remember, we had 4 years ago, somebody had a website called Mud Puddle and pointed out a lot of these things. Didn't get traction, and he didn't get voted into a MUD when he ran again. And he was once on this MUD, but he lost by 1 vote.
I'm more worried.
Partly, I would agree with what you're saying, but I have to think about what Eric's saying too. We do have a very old mud district out there. And I think what happened over at Wedgewood Pond is a prime example of what, that's not going to be the last of it. And I think if we just cut this down and I mean, it's sure there's reserves out there, but I think, we could probably end up using those. I mean, all we need is one major catastrophic issue out there. And, we're not gonna have the money to rectify it. And,
And
well, I
this-
hear what
yeah.
you're saying. I don't think incorporation and I don't think that would even come on the table with the months.
In this past year, water service repair, water distribution repair, storm sewer repair are all up by 100% to 620%. And I think that's a flag that we need to pay attention to.
Well, how much more reserve do you want than the 140,000 that my proposal will give us? And in addition to the 3.5 million as of last audit.
Well, Mike, how much did the incident at Wedgewood Pond cost us roughly?
Wedgewood Pond,
How much?
600,000.
About 600,000 to fix that?
Because there was extra things that we fixed.
Yeah, but I mean,
but
so,
that wasn't all our cost.
I'm thinking of the sewer.
Yeah, it was about
That was
60.
that was the sewer class. The Wedgewood cost was about 200, 250. somewhere around
250,000?
there. Yeah.
Okay, well, there's one incident.
One
Yeah.
incident.
Okay, well, let's move on. Do I have to close item number 9 first, close the public hearing, and then okay. All right, we'll close the public hearing, move on to item number 10, consider an act upon levy the district tax rate. I'd like to make a motion that we adopted the proposed tax rate that was published in the Villager.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
What is that tax rate?
Point.
0.069546.
And you're voting to propose that and have an excess reserve over $300,000. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Well, one incident like we had at Wedgewood will bring that down to your 140,000.
Okay, before we keep discussing, okay, we had a motion and a second. We voted. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, one opposed. So we adopt a 2024 tax rate, correct?
Yeah, 2023 tax rate.
Pardon?
Tax year.
Tax year.
Yeah, fiscal year.
So with that, we should go back to item 8 to approve a revised budget that incorporates that tax rate. Because I think what I've got here from the Hartley handed was the budget that had a 5-cent tax.
No, in our packet, that's my proposal.
That's.
And then our packet is the one they just passed.
My apologies.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Goes to Hartley. Thank you for your efforts on that. Item 11, approve and execution amended district information form.
Yes, that is to incorporate your new tax rates. It will be passed this for execution. This is for the order of living and for the district information form, both of which reflect your adopted tax rate. The district information form is to be signed by any 3 directors.
Do we do that after
Director has
this?
to sign?
Yes. 3 directors.
Yeah, okay, 3 directors.
Do we do that after
President,
this?
vice president, and secretary treasurer.
All right. Chris received
We need to
a,
take action on that, though.
pardon?
We need to take action on the district information.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to accept the approval of the execution form, item number 11?
So
Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right. Chris, monthly report?
Nothing on the monthly report, but I do have the next item on AC lines, if you'd like me to cover that one.
Yes, please.
So before I get started, I'm going to pass around a piece of AC pipe. It is bagged and sealed, but just so y'all can take a look at what it is. It's either a 12 or 16-inch line, but
Don't open
Don't
I need
take
to
a
wear a
bite.
mask and gloves and
it
everything.
if you open it.
Probably smells.
Well, part of what it is we've talked a lot about AC pipe, but we realize we haven't actually shown you what it is. You know, PVC is like a straw, ductile iron, you know, metal. AC pipe's a little different, so I wanted to pass it to you to show you this is what it is. There's layers and so on and so forth. So onto the AC water line. So on page 32 of the trustee summary is a very good recap of what Ed discussed at the trustee level. Covers a little bit about the GM and a lot about the AC pipe. So on the AC pipes, we've heard from a number of mud directors who have recommended that we pause the AC water lines as far as construction and further design. They've asked us to do some more condition assessment testing to do more of a condition-based replacement than an age-based replacement.
Yeah, may I amend that?
Yes.
Very few have asked for that.
A few number of directors. Correct. I believe there's 4 or 5 that have discussed it. About 3 months have been very open about it. So what we've done is we've listened, we've gone around, we said there may be a different way to do this. So what we proposed at the trustees meeting, and we're proposing to each of the MUDs to do a straw poll, is to let us know if you are in favor of pausing the AC water line construction design and then moving forward with the condition assessment, which is $3.5 million over 4 years. Estimated, it could take 2 years, could take 3 years. Money could be less, money could be more. But then actually do a condition-based testing. Condition-based testing is one, ultrasonic, where we put something into the pipe, send it along the pipeline, and gives us data. Then also destructive testing, where we actually dig up the pipe, remove about a 10, 13-foot section, do testing on that, look at the soil, the dirt, the gaskets, everything around. So our proposal is right now to pause the AC water lines construction and design, and then see what y'all think about moving forward with the condition assessment testing. There's a lot more data on page 32, but Dan, unless I missed anything, I think that's.
And you weren't here last month, and we discussed that, and we decided that we did not want to support the $3.5 million and the staff time, which you now have probably expended at least $25,000 in staff time developing your proposal. And you have also told the Woodlands Water Agency that you're going to postpone any action on this until you get a new general manager.
That is one item that has been recommended by a few MUD directors.
Well, it was told us at the last WWA meeting that was a done deal. That you were going to postpone the decision on that and the decision on going ahead, except for town center for the new general manager. Now, is that true?
I don't remember. I remember the pause being essentially no forward movement with construction or design, which would occur after a new GM's on board. But takes us back to doing the condition assessment, which is 2 to 4 years and $3.5 million.
So,
And it would be anticipated that the new general manager would be on board before we execute a contract.
yes,
Or
yes.
condition-based assessment, but what we were kind of doing the straw poll on is to get the interest, because we would need to issue a request for qualifications, go through that process, select a consultant. That would take, 3-4 months to even.
Now,
that.
I may point out that the objection is by directors who have never, ever signed a content to do development within our area, nor are they familiar with the grand accounting that went through 6 phases until it's final. And they don't have a background on this. And they were not able to give us any information except how many years on pipe failures?
According to Google, it's 70, 80, 140 years.
No, you only gave them about 2 years
Oh, the break history?
Yeah,
now?
breakage.
From 2015 to beginning of 23.
So they don't have an issue on that. And if you remember when they put in our big water lines for surface water, within 5 years, we had a big break.
That is true.
And that pipe is wonderful because these pipes don't break normally. Correct me if I'm wrong. They don't break at the pipe. They break at the joints when you have quick mud or dry years where their bedding is not proper. Is this correct?
Which is the concern. The pipe itself, we feel is going to be good because obviously the pipe is just that, right? But it's everything that I call the system. So it's the dirt, it's the installation, it's the gaskets, it's the coupling, it's the ground movement, it's everything else around it that concerns us.
Okay,
And we've
well,
had.
what is the recommendation of our general manager?
Sorry,
What is the recommendation of our general manager?
I think you need to get more information. I think you need to get some data.
You want us to go forward with more information?
That's the best bet.
You want to go the $3.5 million expenditure over 4 years?
That number has been estimated at this point. I think once they get a consultant in, they'll better be able to identify what the recommendation will be. What SJ has done right now is identify, in a worst case scenario, what it would cost using max data collection. We don't know that that's what it's going to end up being. At this point, yes, it's 3.5 million is the estimate.
In the town center project, how many feet of replacement are we talking about?
3 miles.
Yeah, just under 3 miles.
It would seem to me that by doing a testing on 3 miles of pipeline will give us a pretty good sample, particularly if we have a high correlation.
Well, they can't, okay, testing isn't gonna do anything for that pipeline because the pipeline is too small to accommodate what they have there now. Is that correct?
6 Pines.
Yeah.
6 Pines, which is a small portion of the town center line, it does need to be increased in size.
Right.
There was a separate discussion or proposal that was discussed, which was to, amongst the pause of town center, part of that design includes that small piece for 6 Pines. So one of the proposals was to not pull that and go forward with that construction project for 6 Pines while starting the data collection on the system and starting in the North Town Center, or excuse me, the Town Center area, which has already been designed. That project has already been designed at this point. So theoretically, doing the 6 Pines piece, which includes an increase for operational reasons from a 12 to a 16, and then starting your condition-based data collection on Town Center, because it's already been designed, just to confirm or deny whether or not it's more imminent or not.
Yeah, and let me give you some history on this. The developer did not allow Metro Mud to join the Joint Powers Agency until he had done his piecemeal here in the development. And Metro Mud had people assigned who are just rubber stamps to the developer. So anytime that they brought forward to Metro Mud a bond in which they wanted to expand Metro Mud, they would go like this and approve it. And that was done piecemeal. And it was not within the Woodlands Water purview at the time. And they have real problems with that pipe loop. And that's why they're wanting to have that the first thing on the agenda in replacing the pipes.
Well, isn't that the most critical part, though? I mean, that's, where
Well,
that all the activity, I guess you would say, you know, you look at the hospitals, you look at the restaurants, you look at the businesses and everything there. And you know, the thing that worries me is I think we're letting politics get involved in all this too. You know, I've seen the letter that our state rep had put out. And I'm sure, I'm not speaking out of turn, but some of these people that are totally against us are being fed by that letter. And I mean, I don't care if he's sitting there, I'd say it to his face, but um, you know, I don't think we need to let those things come into what should be done. You know, what's the right thing to do. So what are you actually asking us to do today?
Just a general straw poll, an understanding of how Mud One feels about moving forward with the condition assessment testing.
Well, I'd like to go back, as an engineer, I look at it from an engineering viewpoint. My original feeling was in favor of condition assessment. And then I began to change my mind and became indifferent. I'm kind of going back to we need to do condition assessment. And this article that is on our website about Mesa Water District, they determined through condition assessment that their pipes will last as much as 3 times what they originally anticipated, from maybe 40 to 50 years up to 140 years. I don't think we can make the same comparison here. But I thought this article, which was written in 2019, 4 years ago, probably based on work that was done before 2019, is very revealing. And I think there are some lessons that can be learned here. And I was initially thinking of sending you out to California to talk to these folks.
Well, I got one better for you. Dan actually got a hold of them. You want to talk about
Okay.
the conversation we had?
So there's, not specifically Mesa, California, the water district there, but the authors to that article that work for HDR, an engineering firm. We have spoke to them a number of times. They agree that a similar methodology and approach could be taken here in the Woodlands, but do not look at the results and the conclusions from Mesa, California, which is completely different
Yeah.
soil types
Yeah, I
and other
understand that.
variables, and try to say that, yeah, the Woodlands pipes are gonna last 140 years.
Yeah.
But yes, the AWWA, it's M77 kind of approach and standards that are in place for that type of condition-based program are relatable to something that we could do here.
When is this town center project going to start?
Construction is set right now for January of 25. We just do not have funding for construction.
Okay, and I'm just wondering if we really couldn't defer talking about this until we look at 3 miles of AC pipe.
now the general manager has recommended that our consensus be, since it's not an agenda item, that we allow them to start the testing during their program. And I hear that you're in favor of that. Is that correct?
What program?
Well, they have a $3.5 million program to start testing the pipes. And that there's a big one that was available last meeting in which they have, would you explain it? The sequence of events for your testing program.
So step one is to get a consultant on board
Yes,
that is an expert. in-
they want us, our consensus to go ahead with it, and that's the general manager's recommendation.
Then based on discussions with them, they would help us set up the program, whether it's, how much testing, what type of testing, where do we start? How do we analyze the data? All of that is what we need help.
And they already have the package that shows exactly where they intend to test.
And, even going back to Ed's comments that he made at the trustees meeting was, We're looking at moving forward with the condition-based testing program, and that might push the construction of town center back, another year. So we would be testing the town center line. If we're not constructing it right away as planned, then we would be taking samples and tests along that before we go to a construction phase.
Well, there's two types of testing you're talking about. One is the non-destructive. And that's using the X-ray technology.
There's a number of technologies
And
out there.
that's relatively inexpensive compared to the digging up and take a section of pipe out. And I'm in favor of crawling before we walk on this.
Harley, your concern is it the cost or the testing?
Okay. My initial opinion was based on the study that they gave us, which was $3.5 million. I said, let's just go ahead right now. And I was against the $3.5 million proposal. But they bring it to the board for a consensus, and the general manager had no opinion when I was initially asked. Now the general manager saying he's supporting the testing. San Jacinto River Authority said initially they didn't need the testing. Then pressure from a small number of engineers that were on mud boards. They came up with a testing program, which is a $3.5 million one. So things have changed since my original thought, and upon the recommendation of our general manager and the recommendation, what is your recommendation now? Because 3 months ago, when we asked for your recommendation, it was not to do it.
So my thing, and I'll let Dan give his side from the engineering side. The AC pipe's going to need to be replaced. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of, in our case, we've always been proactive at the
Yeah.
request. I say it time and time again, that's what's gotten us through the winter storm, Hurricane Harvey, and everything else, is being ahead of the storm.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of money. We're not asking for AC lines, $200 million all at once. We're asking for it over about 12 years. So we do not have consensus with the MUDs to move forward right now with the full program. So what we've done is taken the big program and tried to shrink it down to where it's more, spoon fed, if you will. So if the condition-based program is what it takes the MUDs to move forward with replacing the AC lines, that's why our recommendation sits with that. At the end of the day, the recommendation is still to replace the AC lines.
Yes.
It's just trying to get the MUDs on board.
Your question though is the $3.5 million would be to test to see if we replace now or later.
No, we're going to replace them.
Replace at some point, but it's to either extend the life, see if we can extend the life of the.
Right.
Yep.
And which would then allow us not to fund the money for replacement in the near future, but in the future.
So
You got it.
Okay. And our share is not, the MUD one share is not $3.5 million. It's,
No,
it's-
okay, all of this goes in water and sewer rates. All right. It's not, the cost to us is water sewer rates.
that is correct.
Prorated based on
Okay.
your connection.
And so you could test the lines and maybe not Mesa, California, but somewhere the 50-year life may be 65 years.
Could be,
Could be.
could be.
Now, do we understand that 3 months ago, when this all came up and we asked San Jacinto River Authority for their opinion, they said, we got to go ahead with these. And we think that testing is not going to prove a lot. Then they made a study, significant staff study, in which they came up with a proposal of invasive and non-invasive testing. And they made that recommendation available for consideration and wanted the boards to consider it. And 2 months ago, 3 months ago, our general manager did not have an opinion. Today, he has an opinion that he wants to do the testing. And I'm not opposed to that.
Let me just add one thing, since I think it was 3 months ago, you said, I'm the one who made the recommendation not to do the condition-based testing at the trustees meeting. The concern I have is that the testing is looking at the pipe itself.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm not concerned with the pipe itself. I'm concerned with everything that holds the pipe together. I'm concerned about the corrosivity of the soil, the change in the water chemistry. As you can see from the pipe going around, it's a bunch of layers, right? And so if you're lower in alkalinity and calcium, then you start leaching it from the concrete. Surface water is low in calcium and alkalinity. So when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it from a guy who's done this for a quarter decade, not quarter decade, whatever, quarter century, 25 years. And it's, we're out there 2, 3 in the morning fixing it. And I'm like, I don't want town center to be without water or anybody. Last Friday, we had a water leak on Slash Pine and
Southfield and Temple.
I'm there, right? But there's about 50 people out of water for about 6 to 8 hours. Small inconvenience overall to the community, but that's the reason I don't recommend going with the condition assessment. You're still going to have assumptions at the end of the day. But instead of having 70% assumptions, maybe you have 60. But is it worth $3.5 million? That's personal.
I think what Chris said needs to be taken into consideration. We've been very fortunate living here compared to Harris County, all over, where people, especially during the freeze and droughts and everything else, that we still turn on our water. It's still there and it's still good. And all these other places are boiling water or don't have any water or low pressure. And we've never had that here. And I really think you start talking about incorporation, I mean, you start, people can't use their water for 3 days or 4 days, or they have to boil water. That'll get a lot of attention, a hell of a lot more attention than what the reserve is. So how long with this testing, if you do this, how long are we talking about?
Right now it's estimated at 4 years, but that's just high level, taking a look at it. It could be 2 to 3 years. Right now, we're doing a high estimate because we're not entirely sure what it's all going to include.
Is this before you hire a consultant or after you hire a consultant?
The consultant will actually help us develop the entire program. Consultant
Wouldn't
first.
it be best to hire a consultant and get that information before we decide to move forward?
You could, we still need funding for that then. So that's one of the reasons we want to bring it up and have the discussion.
I mean, I think that's the most important thing. I mean, we can all think what's on Google or what Steve Tote has said or what, his puppets are saying. I think that, we probably need to get someone that, or people that know what they're doing on this. And I'm not saying that you guys don't. or anything, but
We
there-
have people that
Hold on.
know what they're doing.
Yeah,
And
I
we have
didn't say- I
plenty of
corrected myself.
engineers
I
and
think you guys
mechanics
know
and a
what you're
river
doing,
authority.
but there are experts out there probably that can help you a lot.
And that does go to what Ed was talking about, the trustees meeting, about a phased approach. Getting the consultant on board to help us set up the program, and then looking at Town Center, Six Pines, and maybe the first 2 or 3 projects. Running that for, he threw out a number of maybe $1 million. And you look at all that, set up the program, then you go to phase 2, phase 3 if needed.
I will say,
I think that's a better, I mean, to me, that's approach. I think testing's fine, but I think you need to have someone that knows what they're doing. That says, okay, this is what we're gonna do in phase A, phase B, phase C. And then, we can determine if the whole thing needs to be replaced.
So those
Make
towns-
better decisions.
Those town center lines are among the oldest in the system.
They were around 78. The oldest ones are about 73 to 74.
Okay, so it's very, very, very close.
Nice criticality. Metro came last night with some stats on the value of the properties in that area of nearly $2 billion in appraised value of those properties. And a reminder that, when the line broke in that area a few years ago, it was a pretty significant outage for a while for a lot of those businesses. And their concern is that this is a high value area that they don't want to become a quickly or a very rapidly breaking system.
Is that part of the hospital district in that area too?
Okay, under the Mitchell theory, no building in the Woodlands to be higher than the highest tree. That's 5 stories at the most. Since we are now 4 developers beyond Mitchell, we now have 32-story buildings. And there is a great deal of difference in what was the strain on the water pipes and the pressure that we had to have for those pipes. And that's primarily in the town center area.
I guess my path forward would be to recommend that we help them fund whatever they need to do to get experts on board, to get a consultant on board, and lay out a program on what type of testing needs to be done,
Well,
or if it needs to be replaced.
would you then give the consensus of the board that we want to agree on? So that he can have a position? He wants a position of the board. Do we want to go forward with testing, or do we want to for testing and put the pipes in?
What
Without
about the
testing.
phased approach? Is that one of those?
What?
The phased approach that we were just talking about? The phased approach? Is that,
They've developed a phased approach since we initially talked about this 3
so
months
it's not
ago.
one or the other?
The testing,
It would be a
the
phased approach for
testing
testing.
phase approach is one they developed, 2 months ago?
Well, the phase approach just came up last Wednesday.
Last week, yes.
But when you're doing something over, 2 to 4 years, it's gotta be phased in some way. We anticipate, doing testing based on, kind of our current prioritization, which is the town center, North Town Center. Start there, start the testing there, see how that goes, and work out from there.
So you want to start ahead of the town center project. You don't want to
Ahead
wait.
of construction.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, what's the difference in timing between what you want to do versus start of the construction of the town center project? We talking 1 year difference, 2 year difference, 5 year?
Probably 1 to 2 years.
I don't see us being is it urgent that we start it now as soon as possible, or can we wait? Now, I'd like to get some feedback from what we find out in the town center project.
So that is the approach. If we do the testing, we're gonna test town center. Once we get those results, we'll bring them back and say, based on the analysis, we think town center should be constructed in this time frame.
Now, is our general manager's opinion to support what he just said?
You said that?
Test town center before we replace it.
Yes.
So you two are in agreement now?
Yes.
Okay, is that the position of our board?
Well,
I think it is.
I'm still not clear as to before you replace it.
Not saying something different. We're saying to test it before we move forward with construction.
Right.
And,
What we're saying.
but you're going to do the construction regardless. I mean, that's,
Eventually, but I think doing that testing before our current anticipated timeline on construction would give us the justification and confidence that, move forward with the construction, and which, right now is estimated $15.5 million, and we would need bond funding for.
is the primary reason for construction to increase the size of the line,
That's a portion of it.
Just on six.
or just on the Six Pines piece? And how many feet or miles on the Six Pines?
3 miles, is that what you said?
The upsizing is only a little half mile.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Not even
1,000 feet.
small.
Yeah.
That was why that idea was thrown out, was that from a cash situation or a financing situation, it's a smaller expense. You get the ball rolling on fixing some AC line. It happens to be a line that needs to be upsized, so it's not just renewal, it's actually capacity and operational reason. You do some of that project. While you're doing that construction project, you have this consultant on board starts giving you the recommendation on what they would do as far as the testing goes. Ideally, the first areas that you're testing is the town center area, which you already have designed. So it would make sense to start there first with the testing. That may only take a year to get through that first bit of testing on the town center line, probably less, once you have the consultant on board. And then if the consultant says, yes, this is a good idea, you need to start here, you've already got a design, makes sense, let's go. Then they would need to come back and to all the MUDs to get an agreement on funding. Because something else that I think was a little bit misunderstood coming out of some of the MUD meetings last month was how infrastructure or how expenses get approved. And so if there is a trigger, if the trigger is that SDRA needs to sell bonds in order to do a construction project, then all of the MUDs independently have to vote on that. It's not a vote your trustee to vote. It's a vote on selling the bonds. Your district identifying or giving permission to SDRA to sell those bonds.
No.
Because it is not a budgetary item at that point. It's not an operational R&R budget that you've approved at the trustee level.
Okay.
So that's much different on
No,
the approvals.
that is a decision we've made to let the MUDs be involved in this process. But in fact, our agreement is that the trustee may act on behalf of the MUD.
What I'm trying to understand,
That's the policy.
That is not the policy.
That is the policy.
So,
The policy in our our agreement forming the Joint Powers Agency is the trustee is authorized to act on behalf of the MUD.
on the.
Is that correct?
On the budget, but there's not a mechanism in the interlocal agreement between the MUD and the River Authority that gives the River Authority the ability to sell bonds for rehab and rehabilitation. So there's no power in that agreement for the MUD to delegate to the trustees. That's why we have to have a supplemental, and we've only done this one other time before, back in 2016. We had a supplemental agreement, but 99% of the time, you're exactly right. The authority is delegated to the trustees to approve the budget, which wraps in replacement and renewal that they'll cash fund. They may say, we're going to include costs in the wholesale rate for 3 years to gather up the funds to then cash fund it. But if you have a unique circumstance, which in almost 50 years, we've only done once, the facilities are just starting to get to that age. We've only had it happen one time where the River Authority said, I can't just cobble together 4 or 5 years worth of cash funding to be able to pay for this. I've got to actually bond fund it now. And so we had a supplemental agreement then that authorized the River Authority to issue those bonds. With the number that they were talking about, 300 to 500, depending on what facilities we're talking about, million, that would obviously require bond funding or a significant increase, prohibitive increase in water sewer rates. So that's what we've kind of been talking around.
Yeah.
Is, okay, what are we talking about funding? What's it going to cost? How are we going to pay for it? And so now the River Authority's taken a step back, and correct me if I'm wrong, straw poll, what you're wanting to get direction from the MUDs is to be able to include the 3.5+ million proposed for testing in the 24 budget.
No, financing at this point has not been discussed. We're just trying to see if it's a path forward, if we need to have different recommendations on it.
So the full testing, one component of which would be to test the town center line. Okay.
what I'm trying to understand is a Six Pine project is to increase capacity. You need a larger line there. So that's the primary motivation there. The town center, is that to add capacity, or is it simply to replace the?
It's not the primary. In both cases, the primary is to replace the aging pipe, the AC pipe. Anytime we replace or rehab a sewer line, water line, we run a water model to see what the demand is and what the needs are. Six Pines show that it needs more capacity for operational pressures and flows.
Right.
So it's not due to growth or anything of that nature.
Okay, but in any event, a significant motivation is to increase the capacity of that line.
An advantage.
Yeah, when you go from 12 to 16, you increase the capacity.
Right, we can fix some operational issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Do we have
And
to have a motion on
It's not
that?
to create, I think it's important to distinguish and kind of drill down on that a little bit, because there has been, I think, a little confusion about that point. The purpose, from my understanding from the River Authority, of that replacement is for replacement of aging pipe and to increase the operational efficiency of the line. It's not a MUD saying, hey, I have X number of additional connections I need.
Mhm.
I need you to go and modify your system to be able to provide me whatever MUD A is with additional capacity.
Yeah.
That's a different.
Yeah, I think that was answered in one of the questions. And that's another point I have. Who wrote these questions? Who?
Those questions were presented to me from various directors. No,
Primarily two directors.
several.
And I thought they're good questions. And, you know, I read through this very carefully. Where are these appendices? Appendix B, C, D, E, and F?
Well, all that's up on the Google Drive.
Oh, it is?
So there is numerous appendices. There is dozens of documents and articles associated with this question document.
Okay.
So that should be
And
available
on
to all
who,
directors.
on whose, our Google website?
So
So,
drive.
okay, Google, I need to go back and look at those. So, but I thought the answers were very, very thorough. I mean, I really spent a lot of time going through this and these others, trying to get familiar with this, because I don't think any of us in this room have experience with testing. And least of all, the MUD directors. I mean, you guys, this is what you do for a living, and we don't. And so, I mean, it's difficult to try to understand and wrap my arms around it. And the fact that I've been waffling back and forth between these indicates my lack of either understanding or the uncertainty that just surrounds the whole process. I mean, I'm certainly absolutely in favor of maintaining the quality of the service that Walt talked about. And as a wealthy community, we can certainly afford it. But on the other hand, I'm a cheap SOB and I don't want to spend, if I owned the pipeline and it was the basis of my income, my business, I might make a different decision than sitting here making decision for you to spend your money.
That's why I think it's the right approach is to get a technical consultant on board that can ascertain what type of testing procedure, what we need to do to eliminate a lot of the she said, he said, and people that are more experienced in it than a lot of the MUD directors are.
That's to that point, that's a lot of the feelings I'm getting from some directors is how can I tell my constituents that I'm going to say yes to 200 million when in their eyes they hadn't tested it. Now there's other ways to look at it, conditional or not, but the point is that I'd like to be able to say, and this is not my words, these are what I'm hearing. I'd like to be able to say that we tested it. The experts said this is what it is. Now you've done that already, and that was an age-based, and the recommendation was that you're there, you need to do it. That, you know, for some of these folks, that wasn't good enough.
But I do applaud the SJRA that they are taking the initiative and try to stay ahead of the curve. I think you're definitely doing the right thing. So it's not a question of the right thing. What's the most right thing to do? And that's what the tough decision is.
And what I've heard no argument from anyone on is that they want to lower the level of service. No one has said
Yeah.
that. Everybody wants the same thing. It's how we're gonna get there.
Yes.
So we can have consensus of the board. It is not agenda item, but they want a consensus of the board, and as I hear it, the board has reviewed this. We have listened to our experts from San Jacinto River Authority, our general manager, and we are comfortable with them making the decision to go ahead with the testing that is necessary for the pipes as they go through the procedure. Now, is there any further discussion to this,
Yes.
or is that the consensus of the board?
If they go through with a technical consultant on board that advises them on what needs to be done.
You won't not just give a blank, yes, we want you to go do 3.5+ million of testing, but you're saying you want them to get a consultant who is an expert in testing to develop the testing regimen that would be, implemented throughout the work.
Yes.
And not them.
That's what they said they were going to do.
Yes, yeah.
Everybody in agreement with that?
I agree.
Do we have to do a
So we
motion
are in
or anything?
agreement with our general manager and the San Jacinto River Authority's discussion on this item. Is that correct?
Sounds good.
You in agreement? Yeah, okay.
Thank you. We have no update on number 14. Some people just not.
Attorney's report.
Nothing today, I'm happy to report.
Wow, that's,
Well, we missed two, I'm sorry, we missed two other items. Nothing on Sentinel, retention study.
Nothing on Spring Creek. No, sir.
Okay.
when's this phase 2 study scheduled to be completed?
Phase 2 for
Spring Creek,
Spring Creek.
yeah.
So really the next big milestone is looking at having our third public meeting in the March, April
October,
time.
yeah. It's October, right?
So I think we're talking two different things. Spring Creek is March, April, the detention project. When we're looking, if you're talking about the wastewater strategic
Okay,
plan,
that's in October.
that is coming up October 24th at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot recently about the AC water line stuff. So this is October meeting will be a good time to, kind of resurrect that other large program we're doing on the wastewater side. And give you all an update on what we're looking at for a layout in the master plan, along with an updated cost estimate. That is the high level agenda for the meeting on the 25th, the evening of the 25th.
And going back to item 14 though, when are we anticipating the final report on the Spring Creek detention study? So I take it it's sometime next year. No, there's no deadline.
Not at this point. We need to get through the public meeting and then,
What percent of our budget have we spent on that Spring Creek study so far? I think the original budget was $500,000 for the phase 2 study. Is that correct? On Spring Creek?
on Spring Creek,
Yeah, with the,
that was over $1 million.
Oh,
for that-
okay.
That work order.
um,
It was around, I think,
how far?
I can't tell you off the top of my head. I don't want to tell you something wrong, but we are essentially under budget on that one right now. As we progress.
Under budget and on schedule, or?
It is not on schedule. We did run into some situations there and challenges regarding the solar farm, the development, and had to work through those, kind of rework and look at some of the benefit cost ratios. So overall timeline has been extended. We have coordinated with the Water Development Board to make sure they are okay with that. They have approved that extension, and we are working to close out the project.
All right, item 15, attorney report. Brian, do you have anything? Is there going to be a special session at all? Or,
Yeah,
yeah, will be,
there'll be another one on vouchers, and there may be few other items added as well, but they're looking for special session.
All right, general manager's report, Eric.
All right, thank you. Just a couple quick things. Just wanted to let everybody know that Jim's last day was last Thursday. I reported that last week to the trustees. Wanted to let everybody know that there will be another opportunity to say goodbye, so to speak. We're gonna plan a reception here in the next month or so. It'll be a public reception with the community, so you'll all know about that and be invited. Be an after hours thing, probably here. Wanted to point out in your packet, and probably things you've read in the news lately, is significant amount of municipalities in the region have gone to extended drought contingency restrictions or greater restrictions. Happy to report that the Woodlands has not had to do that. We don't expect that we will as well. So that's good news. A lot of kudos to those that did all the planning years ago to bring surface water here. That's generally the main reason why we've been able to avoid heavier drought restrictions. So,
Where would we be if we didn't have the surface water piping?
probably in mandatory significant restriction, probably the next level of drought contingency stage. Yeah, right now you generally live in stage 2, which is restricting to watering a couple times a week. You live there, and so it also kind of gets people thinking about how they water instead of overwatering, as a norm. 50% of your water comes.
Years, right though.
Well, you have, that's right. And 50% of your water comes from surface water. And so the way that your drought contingency plan works is there's kind of two main components. One is the well run times of your, the run times of your wells, and the level of the lake, or the ability for estuary to provide surface water. And so if your wells run a certain amount of hours per their capacity for so many days in a row, that's what kind of dictates where you are or the level of the lake. So as Chris reported, I think last month or the month before, one of the next stages that they would have a trigger of is if the lake got down to, I think, the 5-foot level. This summer, it hasn't, it's still right around 2.
It's 199, the first trigger's at 198. So you're a foot away.
Right.
But if you get to 198, you go to stage 1, which is where you guys
Already are, right? So get to the greater stage from where we are, I think we looked at it and it was at 5-foot level.
But I do see that last month we're 60% groundwater, 40% surface water.
Go up a little bit.
And Lone Star has made an emergency approval to allow permitters to increase their pumpage by an additional 15%. So we're taking a lot of water out of the ground, which is a concern of a lot of people who feel that this is going to increase the rate of subsidence. And
Yes.
Are we going to get back to, at the end of the year, calendar year, 50-50 surface water?
So keep in mind, it's a plus or minus 10% is what I go off of. So fiscal year 23, you ended at 48% surface water, 52% groundwater. So now that September 1st has rolled around, now we're on a new 50-50 blend for the next 12 months. So we anticipated, but GRP was pushing about 27 million gallons a day. And that's why you saw surface water drop, because we were sending damn near as much as we could to everybody. So the plant couldn't produce anymore. So then you had to go in groundwater to keep the demand.
So you're saying the plant was operating pretty close to capacity, a nominal capacity?
It's going pretty good. 27, 28 is pretty much as we want to push it. We do have construction GRP, which limited it a little bit. Did good though.
We continue to get, in the packet, you'll see some examples, continue to get kudos from the customers, appreciating our staff's efforts. I always like to see those. And then lastly, I just wanted to turn it over to Tori to kind of give an update on what we're doing on public outreach.
And we're starting to hear a lot about the drought, defined irrigation schedule, and we are lucky to be in the stage that we are in, but our customers are having this information and concerns, especially going to social media. seeing what's going on and thinking that's coming to us. So if you could turn to page 27, you'll see an example of a bill and people are asking, why is this high? And those aren't our customers. So our plan is to, we already have some polls and some graphics coming out that we're pushing, but to really push a clear message and to push a branded message so they know that this information is coming from Woodlands Water. On the next page, you'll just see our website. August was our second highest month this year for visitation. We can see that more people are coming to our website and also it's easy navigating our website. So that's a plus. The last 3 months have been higher than previous years. So we're really liking to see those numbers. We're still pushing our weekly emails through our new named Woodlands Water Weekly and basically shifting our focus to the value of water this quarter. Still doing some examples of the marketing with Community Impact Chronicle, the Woodlands Magazine, and really pushing out our Water Smart tool. It's a great tool. If you guys hear anyone talking about it, please get them to sign up. We've had a 34% of single family residents signing up for it. So that's about 11,000 accounts out of 31, I believe. And so that's a really good push. We're really trying to get our customers out there for support and conservation so they can see what's going on with their water. As far as commercial, it's been about 19%. Finally, we have infrastructure and communication consultants. So we'll have an initial meeting with the consultant and SGRA, and then they'll get to their needs and assessment will begin shortly after that. Lastly, we have the outreach event calendar. We really do encourage our directors to go there. It's a great way to get to know the community, get to know the employees here. It's really fun. And we have our biggest event next weekend, which is Landscape Solutions. So please come out if you can. So really fun. That's it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
Kudos, Bob Daly, spoke at the DSC meeting last month, a workshop that we had. And I think it opened up a lot of eyes about things that maybe the DSC needs to look at with the covenants and standards on water resources or sustainability on what we can do differently. And a prime example is that we're seeing more and more redevelopment out there of homes being torn down, and we're starting to see now, I guess you would say, the luxury homes being torn down, like in Hollymead and places like that. Large homes, 8,000 square foot homes, 7,500 square foot homes. And one of the requirements they have is to submit a landscaping plan. And the landscaping plan came in for this one home. And I think everything that was on there was only 3 plants that were not invasive type plants. And all the other plants also were, I guess you would say, water suckers. Stuff that sucks a lot of water. And so, one of the things we're probably going to be start looking at is see how we can get people to work closer with Woodlands Water on rain barrels or plantings or things of that nature. Even to the fact of there's a requirement in the standards of 60-40 front yards, 60% grass and 40%. Maybe we need to look at, is that too much grass out there? Is that really too much watering going on? Because as you mentioned, people talking about, well, my bill's high. Well, you ask them, well, how many times a week you watering, or how many, if you ever thought about multiplying the amount of gallons you use times what the rate is, that's why your bill is where it is. And so it was very helpful with the Woodlands Water coming in and to the workshop and discussing some of the issues out there that maybe we need to look at from a different standpoint. So thank you for participating in that. All right, trustees.
Pages 31 to 33. If you'll notice on the 5th paragraph on page 32, they ask for a straw poll from each MUD meeting on the topic of testing of pipes for SDRA and answering the questions. That was a considerable discussion at the Woodlands Water trustee meeting. as it has been here. And I would request in the future that our staff coordinate closely with SVRA so that the recommendations that come to us are clear from our professionals. And if there's a difference between SVRA and our staff, that those be highlighted so that we can make a decision, because we rely upon our staff and our professionals to give us recommendations. And having been a trustee and a director on a board of 5 people when I was operating for years with 4 engineers, I know that they have great knowledge and they have differing opinions. And that's why we have to rely on our staff. And I encourage people to be prepared for the meeting. And if you have questions, you can ask the staff in advance. And they will give you their opinion and their recommendations prior to the meeting. Then on the Personnel Committee, on page 33, we have a policy that when we hire people, they are 6 months on probation. And our general manager was hired a few months ago, and he is past that point, and the Board of Trustees set his salary for the coming year and adjusted it at the trustees meeting. And I applaud him, and I applaud the cooperation we had with our former general manager, so that Mr. Peterson is up to date and got some of the background. And I thought it was a wonderful idea to have this transition period. And it certainly saved our assistant general manager a lot of headaches and like having someone else answer questions. During the period Mr. Peterson was getting up to speed with the variance between, how many muds were you handling in your former job?
My group managed over 80.
How many?
80.
80? Yeah. And then 80 muds and then having to get to 10. So, and are there any questions?
No, I think we covered everything, Harley. Thank you. Item 18, recess in the closed section. We don't need to do that today. Reconvene in public session. Item number 20, discuss any matters being placed on future agendas. Can we get an update on the One Water Task Force on the next meeting, or just what's going on there, or if that's a dead issue, or?
Nope, I can give it right now, just where we're at. My interest is to try to get a couple of the district individual directors who have shown interest and want to engage in conversation about it. Reached out to several and had a discussion about getting us together to just talk about what our unified focus and message should be with the One Water Task Force. There's a lot of ideas. Previously, focus was on drainage. There's other ideas about what that could be. But I think it's important as we go into our conversations with area-wide leaders through the township, through other entities that might get involved, that we go in unified in what we want to, that One Water Task Force to focus on. So the first start for me is to get the directors, those that want to get involved. And there's about 4 right now that are 4 directors that are focused, and just have a meeting with them and talk about that. Once we get unified on that, then we can start working our way through the township and bring this to the next level.
Okay, good. So you're going to take the lead on that this thing.
And we'll hear from me soon to schedule a meeting.
Okay, good. Anything else put on the agenda? Anybody want to? All right, so I have a motion and second to adjourn.
I so move.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye, motion adjourned. Thank you.